So for this video, what I would like to do is I would like to look at some examples of our different types of variables. And so when we're looking at it, let's look at the first item. We want to classify the variables as qualitative or quantitative. Remember, our quantitative values, what we want to look at is, can we take the average of them? Yeah, they're going to be numbers, but can we take the average of them? Can we do some type of mathematical operation on them? If we can, those are going to be quantitative variables. Otherwise, they're going to be qualitative variables. So think about nation of origin. What type of answers do you give when somebody asks you nation of origin? Do you give a number? Not usually. Usually you give a country. United States, Europe, England, Germany, things of that nature. And so this is a qualitative variable. And you'll notice I'm writing in complete sentences, and I'm being a little bit descriptive because I want to identify what we're looking at. In all actuality, if I wanted to be more specific for, say, my supervisor or something along those lines, what I could do is I could say that nation of origin is a qualitative variable. This really describes it. I apologize, I squinched that up a little bit. I'll do better on the next ones. But think about it. You go to your supervisor, or your supervisor actually comes to you and says, okay, I want you to do this research and get me an answer. Say 2 hours later, you come back and just say, qualitative. Your supervisor is going to look at you and be, what do you mean by qualitative? What are you even talking about? I've asked 5 other people, maybe 15 other people, different questions. So when you are answering any type of question, be specific. Identify, what are you talking about? Nation of origin. What is it? It's not just qualitative, it's a qualitative variable. Okay? So, grams of carbohydrates in a donut. So, grams of carbohydrates, usually we answer those with numbers. 15 grams, 7 grams, 22 grams of carbohydrates. The question is, can we take an average of those? Can we say that one donut has more more carbohydrates than the other donut? Yes, we can. So we can do some type of mathematical operation on this. And so the grams of carbohydrates in a donut is a quantitative variable. Notice I was being very specific about this. Okay? So let's look at number of unpopped kernels in a bag of ACT microwave popcorn. Number of unpopped kernels. Well, first of all, it tells you that it's a number. Can we take the average of the number? Can we say that one bag is more than the other? Yes, we can. So let me start over here. The number of unpopped kernels in a bag of ACT microwave popcorn is a quantitative variable. Now let's look at phone number. Phone number, it is a number. It specifies that it's a number. The question is, do we take the average of our phone numbers? Do we say that my phone number is 3 digits higher than yours? Anything of that nature? No, we do not. Since we do not do mathematical operations with a phone number, think about it. A phone number is an identifier for one individual, one phone. Since it's an identifier and doesn't have something that we've measured, then it is going to be a qualitative, a categorical feature. Yes, it's a number, but it's actually giving you a category to be in. So phone number is a qualitative variable. Okay. Now let's determine whether the quantitative variable means that it is a number in which we can do some type of mathematical operation on. We want to determine if it is discrete or continuous. Remember, discrete are things that we can count. We know the possible values of. Continuous, they are variable. They fluctuate, but what we mean by fluctuate is the fact that it can be anything in between two numbers. Take weight. It can be 180, it can be 181, but it can also be anything in between, down to the 32nd decimal place. It can be anything in between, okay? So let's see here. Goals scored in a season by a soccer player. So let's think about this. A soccer player scores a goal. Is it 1 goal? Is it 2 goals? Is it between 1 and 2 goals? It's exactly 1 or it's exactly 2. It's nothing in between. Therefore, goals scored in a season by a soccer player is a discrete variable because it's not in between 1 or 2, it is strictly 1 or it is 2. Okay, volume of water lost each day through a leaky faucet. It's a number. It's how much water we lose. But the question here is, if I lose 3 ounces, somebody else loses 4 ounces, could a third person lose 3.5 ounces? Could another person lose 3.298 ounces? Yes, it is measured, and it can be anything between 3 ounces and 4 ounces. It's not it has to be 3 or it has to be 4. Now let me caution you, because some of our measuring apparatuses have to be at 3 or 4 ounces, but it doesn't actually mean that it is only 3 or 4. If we got a more precise measuring device, then it could be anything in between. So actually, the volume of water lost each day is a continuous variable. And so we want to look at these and be very specific if at all possible. The number of sequoia trees in a randomly selected acre of Yosemite National Park. Okay, the number of trees. Since it says number of trees, do we really count half a tree? Or do we count half a tree as a tree? In other words, when we count number of trees, we don't count stumps. We count how many trunks there are. How many tree trunks there are. We don't say, oh, well, that counts as a third of a tree. This counts as maybe an eighth of a tree. If we measured height, yes. But the number of sequoia trees is actually discrete. So the number of sequoia trees is a discrete variable. Okay, for the rest of this particular exercise, I'm going to leave the sentence writing to you. I will state the sentence, but I won't necessarily write the sentence, okay? Anything that you turn in to me needs to be incomplete sentences. So let's look at internet connection speed in kilobytes per second. So think about a kilobyte. 50 kilobytes, 75 kilobytes, 80 kilobytes. Can it be 50.2 kilobytes? Or 50.8 kilobytes? Think about during storms or something. We may go down to 21.5 kilobytes. In all honesty, the kilobytes per second is considered continuous because of the fact that if we get more precise, kilobytes, we go down all the way to bytes, then yes, we can have everything in between 1 and 2 kilobytes. Because I can have a megabyte, I can have a byte, and those increase our decimals and that type of thing. Okay, so this is actually a continuous variable. Now then, the level of measurement of each variable. When we're talking about levels of measurement, we can talk about discrete or continuous, but in our case here, levels of measurement is going to be nominal or ordinal. Remember that ordinal variables have some type of order, just as it sounds. Ordinal has an order. Nominal does not have that natural order to it. So let's think about movie ratings of 1 star through 5 stars. If something gets a 1 star versus something that gets a 5 star, does the 5 star have a higher rating? Yes, it does. Because 5 stars is naturally higher than 1 star. Therefore, movie ratings on the star system is considered ordinal, because we can order those based on the number of stars that they have. Now let's look at eye color. Black eyes, brown eyes, hazel eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. Is there an order to eye color? Now I'm not talking about how frequently something happens, but is there an order, natural order that we look at? Yeah, we could do alphabetical, but do we automatically put things in alphabetical order? No, not really. So eye color is actually considered a nominal variable. Highest degree conferred. High school, bachelor's, so on. Someone with a bachelor's degree, do they have a higher education than someone with just a high school diploma? Does someone with a master's degree have a higher education degree or higher degree than someone with a bachelor's degree? Yes. Because there's that hierarchy, it is considered ordinal. Nation of origin. Now, some of us may disagree on this, but the nation of origin really does not have any order to it. We may have a preferred nation of origin or nationality with the highest frequency, those types of things, but there is no natural order, because if you go from the United States to Germany, they're going to prefer one nation of origin over another compared to the US. And therefore, since there is no consensus on which nation of origin is higher than the other nation of origin across the world, this is going to be considered nominal. Number 4, what we want to look at is, what is the population? What is the sample that we're being studied? Is something a parameter or statistic? And what variable is being studied? So the Principal Financial Group conducted a survey of 1,172 employees in the United States between July 28, 2010 and August 8, 2010. And asked if they were currently participating in the employer-sponsored automatic payroll deduction for a 401k plan to save for retirement. Okay, so the population versus sample. When we're looking at this, they surveyed 1,172 employees in the United States between these dates. So who do you think the survey was pointed to? What do you think the population of this survey is? Well, it is the population is all employees in the U.S. between July 28, 2010 and August 8th, 2010. Notice, I am being extremely specific. First of all, our population is always going to have that terminology, all. Then I want to be very specific. We're talking about employees in the United States. So if you're over in China or Germany or Africa, you would not have been considered part of the survey, and you would not have ever been solicited to answer this survey. Therefore, only employees in the United States. And notice, it specifically said between July 28th, 2010 and August 8th of 2010. Therefore, if you quit a job and did not have another one, say you quit on July 27th, you were no longer an employee in the United States because you were not working on July 28th. Let's say you quit your job on July 27th and then picked up a different job and you started on August 9th. Notice those dates are outside of our spectrum. Therefore, you would not have had any possibility of being part of this survey. This particular survey is very specific about when they started, when they did not. Those are the only people that they are looking at. Therefore, our population is only those people that they are looking at. Okay? The sample is the 1,172 employees surveyed. So they are the ones that were asked the questions. Is the value 27% a statistic or a parameter? Notice, of the 1,172 employees surveyed, 27 indicated they were participating. So is that 27% of all employees or 27% of the 1,172? It's actually 27% of the 1,172. So this is actually a statistic. 27% is a statistic. What are we asking? What is the variable being researched? Look at what question was being asked on this survey. They were asked if they were currently participating in the employer-sponsored automatic payroll deduction for a 401k plan to save for retirement. That is our variable. So the variable being researched is if an employee was currently participating in payroll deduction for a 401k. That is what is actually being researched. They're not asking age, they're not asking how much they put in there. They're just asking the question, are you participating or are you not? Now we have spoken about sampling types, sampling techniques being used. And so in this particular question, we want to identify the type of sampling used, whether it was a simple random sample, a stratified, a cluster, or a systematic. To determine customer opinion of its boarding policy, Southwest Airlines randomly selected 60 flights during a certain week and surveys all passengers on the flights. So they select 60 flights and they survey all passengers on the flights. Now question, do you think that there's more than 60 flights for Southwest in 1 week? Yeah, there are. There's a lot more than just 60 flights. So they separated their passengers into groups, basically into the flights themselves. And then they randomly chose 60 of those flights and surveyed everyone on those flights. Because they broke them into groups, selected a few, and then asked everyone on the flights, this is considered a cluster sample. Because remember, cluster is if we ask everyone in specific groups. Stratified is if we break them into groups and then ask some from each individual group. Well, Southwest Airlines didn't ask some from every flight. They asked all passengers on some flights. That makes it a cluster. To estimate the percentage of defects in a certain manufacturing batch, a quality control manager at Intel selects every 8th chip that comes off the assembly line, starting with the 3rd until she obtains a sample of 140 chips. Did she break the chips into groups? No. Did she just sit there and pick off any that she wanted? No. She had a system. She started with chip number 3 and then counted to the 8th. Counted to 8. Counted to 8. That makes this a systematic sampling technique. A member of Congress wishes to determine her constituency's opinion regarding estate taxes. She divides her constituency into 3 income classes: low-income households, middle-income households, and upper-income households. She then takes a simple random sample of households from each income class. So she divides her constituencies into 3 classes. Then she takes a simple random sample from each class. So she wanted to make sure that she had a good proportion, and so she did divide them into groups. Therefore, it's either going to be cluster or stratified. But since she picked somebody from each group, that's going to be a stratified. So remember one thing, go ahead and make sure that you're writing sentences on these. Practice some more from this section, and then let me know if you have any questions.